Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, will Trump dump Mo? Also, there are new polls out. Who's up? Who's down? And the legislature goes on spring break. They need it.
I'm going to stop!
Fly me to the moon!
Hope y'all have fun, kids. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, Angie Horn, political consultant to the GOP and strategist extraordinaire. Should we say that?
Yes,
we can.
And
Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist at APR, and all-around great guy. Welcome.
Hey,
Okay, I'll
everybody.
take it. I mean, I would like extraordinaire, but it's okay. You know what? You get what you take.
That's mine. That's
Well,
mine.
I gave it to Angie this week. I'm a little bit limited in vocabulary.
I understand.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Hey,
It's from
everybody.
hanging around the legislature. Hey, you know, the session is nearing the end, thank God. I just don't think these guys are having any fun, Angie. I mean, you're down there. I mean, there's no laugh riot. There's no comedy. They're just not feeling it. It's just all serious.
well, I think government's supposed to be serious, but you're right. The levity that you usually have at certain times during legislative sessions just hasn't been there. And it has been a grind, that is for sure. So with a few legislative days left, I think everybody's marking down the calendar until sine die.
Well, I hate to say this, but for my Republican friends, every issue is a moral imperative, and for my Democratic friends, every problem is an existential threat to life. And I just don't know how you live like that. You got to have a little bit more fun, but there you go. Well, with just over 60 days until the state primary, the Forestry Association, their political arm, came out with a preliminary, well, not with a poll from McLaughlin and Associates, and there were surprises, Angie.
There were. So for those of you who don't know, McLaughlin is the standard bearer for polling in the United States in political races. He gets it right more than anybody else, and has been sort of the standard bearer that every pollster wants to be. I would say that McLaughlin is the Michael Jordan of polling. And, he polled this statewide race in Alabama and showed that Mo Brooks looks like he is on the road to a rousing defeat.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad, Susan, for Mo Brooks. I mean, the guy was at about 40 points, and now he's down to 17 points. And it looks like Katie Britt and Mike Durant are really head to head, neck and neck. Durant polled in at 33%. Katie Britt just under that at 32%. That's within the margin of error there.
It is within the margin of error, which we've expected all along among the three candidates is the margin of error. But I have to think that probably Brooks' people that are falling off are going to Durant. That's kind of what it's looking like to me in the poll, but I could be wrong. However, we do have a large chunk of still undecideds in that race.
Josh, one of the things I think you pointed out very astutely in your report on this is the favorables, unfavorables. That's always a good place to look for how the candidates are doing.
Yeah, Durant's favorables were really, really surprising, and actually his the fact that his unfavorable rating was so low. I want to say it was 13%, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Which is really a nice spread if you're this late in the race, and it means that nobody's really attacked the guy. They have not run the ads on him, and I think they may have missed their shot on some of these to actually go after Mike Durant. Because I don't know if you can turn that around in such a short period of time. The saturation of ads that he's had, which I think have annoyed a lot of people that follow this stuff on a day-to-day basis, but it seems to be very effective with the average voter, according to this poll.
Angie, that's a very good point. You know, the Club for Growth has spent millions of dollars attacking Katie Britt. There's been plenty of attacks on Mo Brooks. Nobody's touched Mike Durant. You think that's coming?
I do, but I think that that's the story out of this poll, right? Is that Club for Growth has thrown millions of dollars at Katie Britt, calling her everything but a child of God. And she is still, in the lead. And so I think that shows you that Katie's support is very, very deep. The Durant support is people who don't know anything about him other than the millions he's put out about himself. I think you'll see that change now. I think you'll see the Brooks people start going after Durant. I think you'll see Club for Growth start going after Durant. And then I think what will happen then is those numbers will drive down. Katie's numbers are going as low as they've gone because everybody's thrown everything at Katie Britt, and she's been able to withstand that for the leader that she is. So I think you'll see her numbers stay where they are, and I think you'll see Mo and Durant start going after each other.
I mean, Susan, is there a point where people recognize that Mike Durant denied his sister's statements of incest, even though his father admitted to incestuous relationship with his sister? Mike Durant lied about it, lied about his father. Mm-hmm. Does that catch on to people actually begin to look at him and say, this guy defended his father who raped his sister?
Right. And I think once you get that out to women, if the Britt and Brooks campaigns can actually get that to the women of Alabama, you will see a firestorm go against Mike Durant. But it's just a matter of getting the message to the women.
I think that's true. This thing, though, you look at how much money has been spent. I mean, according to media buying, $14 million, Angie, has been spent on this Senate race already.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about that number is that of the in-state Alabama money, that's pretty much your pro-Katie Britt campaign ads that just show the Katie Britt campaign. But when you look at the massive percentage of this money that's being spent by DC swamp PACs, when you're looking at things like the Club for Growth PAC has spent millions of dollars to attack candidates in this race, they're not even from here. So this isn't majority Alabama money. And I think that that's the story that comes out, is that these people like Club for Growth have spent millions and millions of dollars on their high horses in D.C. trying to figure out what us rednecks down here respond to, and it turns out they wasted several $1 million.
Josh, there's really not a Democrat in the race, so you really don't have a candidate in there, but can you imagine a Democrat with $14 million to spend? Where do you spend it?
Yeah, it's listen, that's a lot of cash for a Senate seat, and there's going to be more to come. I would imagine, just guessing, I would guess they'll probably double that over the next few weeks here, because they're going to start buying up ads left and right, and all of them, except for Mo, have a lot of money. There's so much money in this. There's so much money. And,
I know.
I think it distorts so much of what we're trying to do as a government when you have that much money flowing into a single race like this.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I love Alabama. As many of you know, there are few issues facing our nation as important as election integrity and election fraud. This is why the people of the great state of Alabama must work together to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. So get out, register to vote, and get a photo ID so you can make your voice heard and decide the future of our great country. Thank you.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Josh, the same poll by McLaughlin and Associates showed Governor Kay Ivey in a commanding lead over her opponents. I mean, it's almost embarrassing, an embarrassment of riches, maybe we would say, that she is doing so well when these other people are working hard and spending money.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, Kay Ivey figured out a long time ago the formula for being a successful governor in Alabama, which is just stay out of the way. Just stay off camera, stay as quiet as you can possibly stay. Don't have a mistress anywhere that's swinging from a chandelier. I'll do that, and everything's okay, I think.
Angie, you've run governor's races before. I think Governor Ivey's doing the right thing. She's just running her game, and she's not paying attention to the competition.
Sure. So to use a football analogy, our favorite sport here, she's in the SEC. She doesn't care what the Gulf Coast Conference is doing, right? And so when you look at the fact that she's polling around 60%, having spent a quarter of the money that Linda Blanchard has spent, and the same with Tim James, they're just not getting anywhere. So I think the conversation that has to happen now in those campaigns, and this is speaking from a campaign consultant, this is the time you sit down with your candidates and you say, we tried, but we're not going anywhere. And it's irresponsible and borderline immoral for me to spend any more of your money because this isn't going anywhere.
And are there, Susan, that many people that are willing to walk away from the type of money, especially that Lindy Blanchard's spending?
I don't think so. I mean, Angie is a very good, honest campaign consultant in that she will tell her candidate exactly, here's the way it is, whether you like it or not. But there's so much money, as we were talking about in the advertising part of that, there's so much money in these campaigns, it's going to be hard for a lot of these people to walk away from that much money.
I mean, Josh, let's be honest, that's a lot of money. And these candidates are in there for sincere reasons. And they always think, well, if I just do one more thing, if I just get this break, blah, 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 we're going to come through. But that's not the way the real world works.
No, and it's a little bit like a gambler's mentality where the next one is going to be the one that hits, and so I just got listen, I've lost this, but I've got to keep throwing the money after it, I've got to keep throwing the money after this, and and you're right, it would be wise for I think some of these folks to say, listen, there are better places in the world for you to spend your money, especially in Lindy Blanchard's case. She does a lot of great work with that charity around the world with kids.
Yeah.
So I think maybe just take the money and send it to some of those folks, and because I don't think it's going to happen.
And let me say this, for consultants, most consultants will sit down with their candidates at some point with the writings on the wall and say, this is what happens, because it's your reputation that goes forth from this, right? And so, I'm not the only one that sits down and has difficult conversations with my candidates when there's not a path to victory. That is a very commonplace thing in my industry, is you sit down at some point and you say, it's not a wise thing to spend more money. It's not a wise thing to continue this. And so I'm not a unicorn. That is a common practice in my industry.
Okay.
And at this point with Lindy Blanchard, she's got a lot of name recognition now. She could divert that money to something more positive, say a think tank in the state or whatever, and use that to still be involved, but put it in a different way. I don't know what Tim James would do, but I love him to pieces. But
Tim James is going to be here, and he's going to speak his mind as he always has. I want to turn to what I consider the scariest race that we have in Alabama right now, and that is Secretary of State. Jim Ziegler, according to this poll, is polling at 25.8%, which is not great, but he's 10 points ahead of the field. And basically, Josh, nobody knows who these candidates are.
Yeah, that's the one thing Jim Ziegler's got going for him is that he knows how to find a camera, and he loves them to death, and he will involve himself and insert himself into any sort of situation that he can to get more publicity. And so right now, I think it's kind of like with Mo Brooks early on. People were polling high for Mo Brooks. The polls were high for Mo Brooks because people knew who he was. I think it's kind of the same way with Jim Ziegler. And if Wes Allen and some of these other people don't figure out a way to get themselves some name recognition soon, whatever they have to do, I don't know what that is, maybe oppose a toll bridge or something, then I think they're going to have some trouble.
Well, the problem with Jim Ziegler that people need to understand is, as Secretary of State, he will still seek the camera. He's not serious about the office. I mean, he's been auditor, for however long, and basically you go in and count chairs if you do that. And so Secretary of State is a very serious office in our state. It manages our voting in the state. As we know, that's very important, especially here, to make sure it's right.
Well, it just seems like a terrible situation that our state's in.
Well, let me say this, and as spirit of full disclosure, I am Wes Allen's political consultant, have been for years. But I'll say this: Jim Ziegler has been on the ballot for 40 years and is sitting at 25%. This is Wes Allen's first statewide race, and grassroots alone have gotten him to 13%. Once he begins his statewide campaign, statewide media and broad media campaign, I think you're going to see those numbers flip. Wes Allen is the most qualified and the only one above single digits.
This is not a paid political.
No, it's not. But I agree with Angie. I would trust Wes Allen.
I want to just say that it's really kind of scary right now with that run. The other thing that came out of the McLaughlin poll is top issues for Alabama Republicans, and not surprising, it's economics. That's the main thing: cost of living, inflation. But I was surprised that masks are no longer a big deal, and yet we've got people out here still screaming about masks. And Josh, the Republican Party doesn't seem to care about masks anymore. They've given up on them, but they keep yakking about it. Lawmakers do.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand what the trucker convoy is protesting. I mean, they're still running around D.C. and I still don't know what they're protesting, and nobody can really articulate that. And it's we've done away with masks for quite some time. I mean, I was never a fan of masks. I understood them, and I wore one, for quite some time. But it just, this hadn't been a thing here in a long time. I don't know what people are still complaining about.
Well, and it's not a thing with the voters. They're more worried about inflation. They're more worried about even their Social Security. Mm-hmm. But that's where we are. I mean, this is the state of the Republican Party in Alabama. They're not even worried about transgender and CRT in school, but we keep seeing that pushed. But there you go. We're gonna have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. A report by the Washington Examiner. They spoke with former President Donald Trump. And Josh, you wrote about this. The former president seems to be soured on Mo Brooks and is thinking about unendorsing him.
Yeah, he, this is not a surprise. I think there have been a lot of rumors out there and a lot of things kind of floated over the last few months about him souring on Mo Brooks. And that, they finally got him, the Washington Examiner finally got him on the phone and got him in a conversation about it. And he admitted, that he's having some problems. He had some problems, as everybody reported, with the comments that Brooks made at the rally in Coleman about, moving on from the 2020 election, which was the only sound advice Mo Brooks has ever given anybody, as far as I know. But the former president took issue with that, and he's now questioning whether or not Mo is still devoted to him as fully as he once was, and said if you endorse somebody based on principle, and if those principles change, then you can change your endorsement. And so he didn't come out and say he was going to dump him, but it certainly sounds like he's headed that way.
Susan, I mean, why wouldn't he? Why would Donald Trump want to be a three-time loser in Alabama? Because that's where it's headed.
I don't know. I mean, because it's obviously the Brooks numbers are going down. It's obviously that, you know, Katie, Britt, and Durant are going up. Why not switch horses here?
Right, right. Angie, look, I know you know more about campaigns than any of us, but to me, I know I've talked to people from down in Mar-a-Lago country, and they say that Trump does not like Durant, called him a nasty man when he heard about what he did to his sister, and also says he's a John McCain Republican, which is not real popular with the president's base. I mean, why doesn't the president just come out and say that Durant's a loser, so's Bo Brooks, let's go with Katie Britt a winner?
Well, I think we're getting there. So if you look at what the president said this week on the record to journalists, he said, I'm disappointed in Mo Brooks. He said he wasn't, you know, he indicated he didn't know if Mo Brooks was the right choice. Certainly indicated he was having a level of buyer's remorse. So whether or not he officially switches horses or not, the President Trump has sent the signal that he no longer really cares for Mo Brooks. I think the most interesting part of that story, because none of that was a surprise to anybody, but apparently Mo Brooks, who responded in that story with feigning some sort of shock of all of this, when this has all been reported since the moment he got booed at the rally in Coleman 6 months ago.
Right.
So, you know, this whole thing is political theater. The problem is nobody gave Mo the playbook. And so, you know, he keeps changing internal staffs. He keeps changing campaign staffs. And I think he's trying to find the playbook, and the train's left the station, man. The play's going on without you.
Yeah, and his favorabilities, as we've shown, are just in the toilet. People just do not like Mo Brooks. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump backed Luther Strange. He lost. He backed Roy Moore. He lost. If he stays with Brooks, he's going to lose. And I think the thing that we really need to hear from Mar-a-Lago is, what do they think about Durant? Because I hear it's very negative. Anyway, crazy. Hey, Josh, I know you're going to be excited about this. Arthur Orr, who seems to have gone right of Attila the Hun for some reason. I think he's running for higher office.
Of course he is.
But he has a bill that would say that a patient can ask for any type of COVID medication they want, and a doctor, a pharmacist, a nursing home, they all got to give them whatever medicine they want.
Yeah, or risk their license in doing so. Yeah, you know, so listen, I hear that Xanax and Oxycontin are really effective on COVID. And listen, you know what? I think that they would treat that. And so you, as my doctor, must now give that to me under this law. What are we doing? I don't know. What are we doing? Why do we this is like the fourth bill this session where the legislature has inserted themselves between doctors and patients. And just stop, okay? But there's a reason. What in the world? You agree with Joe? You can't say it out loud, so you had to write it down. I know. Just, there's a reason they go to medical school. There's a reason why they spend all that money and take all that time to go to medical school. And there's the reason why they make the decisions on these things. Just stop it.
And once again, they're in a rush to get a bill through that these little boys that just have to have their way about something, regardless of the consequences, go in and put in an open-ended bill. And like you say, I think Oxycontin would be the perfect thing for my COVID. Yeah.
Well, you don't even have to have COVID. You just have to believe that whatever it is would prevent your COVID. And it can be any FDA-approved medication as long as you're willing to sign a piece of paper that says, I think this would prevent COVID. So, I mean, I'm seeing visions of, Dr. Feelgood's pain management clinic and COVID prevention,
Listen, there are marijuana derivatives that are FDA approved out there. So,
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I could just see that, local meth head walking into the hospital going, I need 100 Oxy right now, and if you don't give it to me, you lose your license.
Oh, man, if there ever was a time to build a stop and drop, this is it.
Yeah.
We can get that done. Well, I was hoping to give y'all nothing to argue about today, and I'm not sure that I am, but we're going to get this bill through on divisive concepts, And there's a lot of divisive concepts out there, and they go way beyond the what Ed Oliver's pushing out there. But one of the things that I thought was interesting that Mr. Oliver said, that he's worried about communism and socialism and Marxism and them grooming our children and excuse me, indoctrinating them.
Yes,
Josh?
Yes, and indoctrination of children that's happening all over Alabama. Listen, if you think that these things are occurring with Alabama teachers in Alabama schools, or for the most part in pretty much any school system, any public school system out there, with these teachers, with these public school teachers that go to work every day and teach these kids and help raise your children, that you send them to school and trust with your children every day. If you think this is happening with them, then you don't know very many of them. Because you run this past somebody who actually knows teachers, and you ask them, even if they believe it, you say, oh, well, you know some teachers. Do they do this? Oh, well, no, not the ones I know. But, I mean,
all right,
it's nonsensical. It's just idiotic.
Well, unfortunately, Josh just filibustered the remaining time. So we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.
He's gonna pay for it.